we have so many issues with the Reinsdorf organizations, and it's just bleeding into everything, and it makes it.
And I don't know how much you follow those other two teams, but they're not very good either. Sam. The White Sox and the Blackhawks.
White Sox, they're like the Bulls of the trio are somehow the best. So,
Miller Lite, Chief. Miller Lite. Miller Lite, the big game coming up next Sunday, but this weekend.
Yep.
Kind of your first real time, at least for me. Maybe pop on some college hoops.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to college basketball until football is over, so I will definitely be doing that. And this week, Chicago Standards, damn near patio weather.
Yeah.
So,
right?
yeah.
It's rainy today.
Yeah,
rainy
but we've had like 40-degree days. I love that tradition where you've been just in the depths of winter and it's negative whatever, and then you get the odd day and people are outside with like normal jackets and it's drinking Miller Lights on the patio.
How about a Pro Bowl Miller? Do we like a Pro Bowl Miller?
No.
I like the Miller portion of it.
Yeah, I like the Miller portion. The Pro Bowl I can do without. That's why I will be watching college basketball.
How about a Groundhog Day Miller?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Just drink a beer and
see that shadow or don't. I'm still having Miller Lite.
Exactly. Maybe be like, all right, if he sees a shed, I'm drinking the bottled Miller. If he doesn't, I'm drinking the canned Miller.
Yeah.
Hey, Miller Lite, great taste, 96 calories. Go to MillerLite.com/stretch to find delivery options near you. Or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere they sell beer. Tastes like Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Hey, we don't talk much Bulls on this show. We just don't do it. None of us are really super interested in the team right now. They've kind of been the same forever. They don't seem to care. They don't seem to make a move to bottom out.
I like talking about them.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I would like to care again.
Yeah.
We kind of figured with all the buzz around the trade deadline that's next week, it's a good time to talk about the Bulls.
Totally.
So we're joined by Amico Hoops.
Yep.
Sam
Amico.
Yeah, Sam Amico. We talk all about what's going on, the state of the franchise, and who he thinks gets traded. So hope you guys enjoy it. I know it's kind of outside our realm, but hey.
That's why we had to bring in somebody who knows what they're talking about.
But we want to get there.
I want it to be it's Friday here. We got Friday hoops. I love basketball. I really do. But it's the Bulls make it impossible.
Yeah.
So I hope that they take the right steps and get this thing turned around.
Yeah. So we can just kick to it now. Hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, we are now in the interview show of The Stretch. Today we are joined by Sam Amico. He is a senior NBA writer for Hoops Wire. Sam, we are two tortured Bulls fans at the moment, so I kind of want to talk some trade deadline. First of all, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It seems like there's a lot of stuff going on before the trade deadline, as is always the case, and obviously Chicago, again, is one of the most mentioned teams so far. It seems like I'm writing a story about the Bulls and trade rumors every 20 minutes.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we wanted to have you on, because to be quite frank with you, our Bulls interest has dwindled dramatically because of the state of the franchise right now. But when you hear guys are involved in trade rumors, you always kind of want to talk about that stuff. So we're excited to get into it.
Yeah, I feel like they have a lot of names that I like, but none of them are good here. If that makes sense, like they don't work together. So we would love to have something to talk about, something to be excited about, and more than anything, we would like to just have a path and a direction and a plan. And it feels like the Bulls are perpetually trying to finish 10th. Is that the outside view of them as well?
That seems to be, the league-wide feel of where they are kind of spinning their wheels. You know, they always call it NBA purgatory, the worst place you can be. You know, if you don't want to be in the middle of the pack, it's okay to be in the middle of the pack if you're, say, the Detroit Pistons and your star is young and, you know, entering the league. But the Bulls seem to be right in that middle with, like you said, very good players, and LaVine and Vucevic and Lonzo Ball, and, you know, but just haven't been able to connect those three to the point where they can get to a level that's, say, even top 4 or 5 in the Eastern Conference. So with that in mind, when you're in the situation that they're in, you're constantly looking for ways to, you know, either get up to that next level or get down and get another first round pick and get in the lottery and start to rebuild a little bit. But they're really stuck in the middle. And by all accounts, it's hard to say which way they'll go, but they're looking to change that ahead of the trade deadline. Whether they have anything that moves the needle for them or not, you need a dance partner. So
yeah,
it's hard to tell what they're going to do.
There was an article in The Athletic that came out just in the last few days, and there was a blurb in there saying that AK, our vice president of basketball operations, has a reputation of being extremely difficult to negotiate with. He overvalues his guys, and that prevents him from getting deals done. Have you heard whispers of that personality type as well? And is that kind of getting in the way of deals that probably should happen?
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. Obviously they've been we've heard about the Zach LaVine trade rumors since last November. So it's like a year and a half of them looking to move him. I also think it's difficult. The players that he's been trying to trade aren't easy to trade. Zach LaVine last season had a lot of injuries. The contract situation was more of a concern last season than it is this year, it seems like, for opposing teams. So in his defense, in the Bulls' defense, it's hard to, it's not easy to make a trade. A lot has to go into it. You have to get people to agree to it. And of course, other GMs are always going to spread the word, oh, this guy's difficult to deal with because he won't give us LaVine or Vucevic or Lonzo Ball for nothing. So, I think that, it's both fair and unfair to say that. But anytime a franchise, again, is kind of running on a treadmill and really not going anywhere other than maybe the play-in tournament, you do have to look at the front office and say, why are we not able to make some of these moves when you look around the league and other teams don't seem to have too much of an issue moving their own guys if they need to?
Well, it does feel like at this juncture, because that first-round pick belongs to San Antonio, but it's top 10 protected, if they don't do some things to lose more games, that feels like malpractice to me. So how likely is it that they do tear this down?
I think if they don't tear it down, it won't be for lack of trying.
Okay.
I think that they're really, that's something that they're, I don't want to say determined to do, but that seems to be the best plan right now moving forward. And I think they recognize that, they're seeing the same things. The front office sees the same things that the fans and the media see. And it's just, okay, another year, which is where they are, exactly where they were the last year or two. So, with really no reason to believe, things are going to get a lot better. So, the issue again is these new labor rules are going to make trades more difficult than usual, because teams don't want to hit that second tax apron because, the new labor rules, the old labor rules just punished ownership, which was, we're going to tax you to death. And the owners were like, whatever, we can afford it. Now it impacts the general managers. And that's what's really going to handcuff a lot of trades is, when you're telling a GM, you make this deal and you go out and you get a Zach LaVine, say if you're just random team, the Golden State Warriors, you're going to be up against the second tax apron and you won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to trade picks. You won't be able to sign people. It's really going to handcuff you. So when you make a rule that handcuffs general managers, that makes what the Bulls are looking to do that much more difficult when looking and seeking for a partner.
Can you get more into that, Sam? Just touch on it more about the second apron and the new trade rules. Just dumb it down as easily as you can, because I think a lot of our fans especially are just kind of casual Bulls fans at this point, and they don't really realize that things have changed and it's not easy to flip guys. It's not as easy to flip guys as it used to be.
Yeah, that's really it in a nutshell. In layman's terms, if you're looking to trade a bigger contract like a Zach LaVine and a team such as, the Warriors or Bucks or some of these other teams we've heard linked to him want to get him, and they brush up against that tax apron, or go over it, not only are they paying a huge, massive penalties bigger than the NBA has ever instituted in terms of tax penalties. If you go over the cap, you pay, say you go over by $20. Well, then you have to pay that $20 and another 20, which obviously the numbers are much greater than that.
Yeah.
But trying to simplify it here. So that's one element of it, which is not a huge deal for owners. What's a bigger deal is that it limits the draft picks that you can trade, the future draft picks you could trade. You can't sign people on the buyout market. It just makes your entire roster construction and roster building so much tougher. It handcuffs you basically. And the NBA really instituted these new cap rules to try to get rid of these, the big threes that we're seeing less and less of.
Yeah.
So, that makes it more difficult for teams as Chicago that's looking to move some of these guys to these so-called contenders or teams that want to contend, following the trade deadline next week.
So with that in mind, who do you think is the most likely to go? Because I feel like there's 6 names. It's Lonzo, Ayo, Zach LaVine, Vooch, and maybe even a Kobe White. Of those guys who have been kind of, I guess, the core of this team, who is most likely to move during the season?
Yeah, trades are obviously really hard to predict, but I would say that LaVine's drawing more interest this year than he did last. I think last year it was close to nothing because of his contract, and I think he was injured at the trade deadline. So I think that's the guy that most teams are focused on. Vucevic would be a close second, simply because if you're an opposing team, you're looking at those two guys as guys that could help put you over the top or put you in serious contention without having to mortgage your future for the most part, or at least, give away too much. I think Kobe White, the Bulls love him, and understandably so. They're going to be asking for the moon and the stars for him. I don't think they really want to trade Kobe White. Lonzo Ball, I think there's a shot there of him being a buyout candidate if he's not moved. And I think most teams are looking at him that way, as opposed to saying, yeah, we're going to give you 2 players or 2 picks for Lonzo Ball, when they pretty much know the Bulls want to let him go. So I think that makes LaVine and Vucevic, the 2 guys that are really realistically possibility of being trade targets or being moved. And really, they're right there. And the Detroit Pistons, they're the only team. They have $14 million in cap space. So if there is a LaVine deal out there, that's a team that could facilitate it or potentially have maybe some interest.
And that's going back to Zach. We obviously are so honed in on just the Bulls. You covered the league at large. What would you do with Zach LaVine? Because he's had a great year. He's had a really good year. His efficiency is near the top of the NBA. What would you do with Zach LaVine if you were the general manager?
Yeah, and by all accounts now, all of a sudden, after wanting a trade last year in November, from the sounds of things, he wants to stay in Chicago, So I think there are worse things you could do than keep Zach LaVine if you're not going to get back picks and assets and things that are going to help you build, if that's the goal, is to restart, you could potentially move somebody else, a Vucevic, or, again, they love White. But if you really want stuff back, you're going to have to trade Kobe White. So I think there are worse things than building around or using a Zach LaVine as kind of your centerpiece moving forward, especially if he wants to be in Chicago. And like you said, he's playing very well, and really is the biggest reason that they're even in the mix right now. So, if you can't trade him, and you look around the league and you're trying to make a move and you're trying to look for a fair deal and you can't find one, then you can just sit them down and say, look, we've made these other moves, or we're going to make these other moves during the off season, and you're going to be included in everything we're doing. I think there are worse plans than that, so I don't think it's terrible if they're unable to trade LaVine, especially if you trade him and you don't get equal value or really better value back.
See, I would come at it from, it's almost like, who cares if you don't get equal value? Because we just have to start over. So
yeah, sure.
And I'd rather, like, finishing 10th versus finishing last for me is basically the same. Like, I'm going to care the same until they have like a plan where they're actually a contender. So what do you think is his value on the trade market? Are you getting a first round pick that's unprotected? Like what are you even getting for LaVine?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that if you're the Bulls, you're probably getting, you would hope, an Andrew Wiggins or an expiring veterans contract. The picks are what would put you over the top, but you'd have to take back salary. Mm-hmm. You'd want that salary, most cases, to be expiring, unless it's a really good young player. If you're Chicago, you're starting with and negotiating with Golden State, you're starting with Jonathan Kuminga and a pick. You're probably not going to get that, but that's going to be the centerpiece of the type of deal you want. It is a good young player and a draft pick, and we'll take your bad veteran contract that comes off the books next year. So I think if you're Chicago, really you don't want to go too much short of that.
Yeah.
You might, you know what I mean? You might not get Kuminga, but you want somebody who's in that wheelhouse, whether it's from Golden State or anybody else, who's going to give fans a reason to be excited and say, okay, this guy is part of our future. This veteran's books or contract comes off the books at the season end, and we got a first-round pick. I think that those are the things you're looking for LaVine. And if you don't get those, I wouldn't just trade him just to trade him because, again, you're not going to find a player like him in the draft probably, especially where the Bulls are drafting. So I think that they're cognizant of those things, and those are the things they're going to demand, whether it's LaVine or Vucevic or any other type of random package they're putting out there.
Because he's got 2 years left after this?
Yeah, 2 years and $95 million.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of don't hate your perspective. You kind of just dump out all the rest, kind of bottom out that way, and then he's even easier to trade next year if you want to. It kind of is a route that would be interesting. I think people in Chicago at this point would, and it's no disrespect to Zach, but I think people are just so ready to start over. I think people would be disappointed though if we don't trade him this trade deadline.
Disrespect to Zach. Like we've run this. I feel like we've run this experiment, and it was great for about 3 months until Lonzo Ball got hurt in, what was that, 2020? And they were the 1 seed with DeMar and Vooch, and like that was like a fun team to watch. And ever since then, I mean, Karnasova's record is now 176 and 189 for his entire tenure. That's just not good enough. And LaVine has been at the center of this the whole time.
Yeah, but it's also not LaVine's fault that he emptied out the cupboard to go grab Vucevic, right? Like the moves supporting this, he bungled a number 4 overall pick.
That's definitely true.
A ton of moves here that he has failed along the way. And Zach is, whether you like it or not, he's been the most consistent piece, right?
He has, but I would have a hard time imagining them retooling in enough time where he's still in his prime that was a better core than Vooch, DeMar, Lonzo, and these other guys that they've had. Like I feel like they've tried it with him as the centerpiece. Let's try something else.
Hey, let's pause for another second because I want to talk about Body Armor. This show is brought to you by Body Armor Sports Drink. Real hydration, real ingredients, packed with electrolytes, vitamins, and nothing artificial. Body Armor Sports Drink has great tasting flavors like strawberry banana and orange mango. Chief, I really enjoy the cherry lime one.
That's a great one.
Lights out.
Hits.
It's the best cherry lime sports drink I've had.
That's the one I reach to when I'm down on the basketball court for sure.
And if you're looking for the Body Armor light ones, the peach one is very good as well.
Take that back. I like the peach one the best.
All right, either one.
Yeah, they're great.
They're both great options. You could find that pretty much Body Armor's everywhere.
Body Armor's huge now.
Grab one off the shelf at the convenience store or whatever you want to do. Or you can get yours today at Walmart or a local grocery store, like I said. Make sure you're drinking Body Armor. It's good stuff, guys. They got so many great flavors. They got the light version. They got the regular version, packed with electrolytes, like I said, vitamins, nothing artificial. Go drink your Body Armor.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? Sometimes players who become kind of the face of the team and the face of the organization that LaVine has been, really even with DeRozan and Vucevic and before Lonzo got hurt, LaVine has been kind of the guy that you think about when you think about the Chicago Bulls from the outside. And sometimes when those guys are part of mediocrity for so long, you just, not necessarily the organization, but the fans, that's how they identify the team is, okay, they've been average with this guy as their centerpiece, so let's move on from him. And sometimes you have to move on from players for that very reason. It's just, we're not building our brand with this guy as the face of the organization. Yeah. As great as he's been this season in terms of, his attitude, his play, and, saying all the right things. Sometimes you just need to move on from people for that reason. But again, NBA trades are difficult because you're dealing with people. Yeah. And you can't just say, hey, we're trading Zach LaVine, so take him and give us something. You really need to find dance partners, and sometimes you need 2 or 3 dance partners to make a deal.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not advocating extending him and actually trying to build around him. I'm just saying it's an interesting rebuild strategy if you trade everything besides him, because his value could seemingly even be higher next year with a year and a half left on his deal.
Or he could look around the room.
It is very high right now compared to last year, and I think the Bulls are probably pretty thankful that it got back to where it is right now. So
last year would have been impossible to move him. There was no hope. There were some rumors, but there was no hope of them moving him. This year, I think that there's much more interest in him. People have seen his attitude and seen the way he's played. So I think it's realistic that they could potentially move him before Thursday.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of teams. Obviously, there's the aging teams like the Lakers and the Warriors that are kind of looking to get better, get those guys their last pieces to kind of win one more ring before they retire. And like you said, there's the young teams that are trying to support their new guys like Wembanyama and Cunningham. So there kind of might be some intriguing dance partners here, but in the end, I think obviously it all comes up to return. So I'm interested to see what happens for once, because we've been so silent at the trade deadline for years.
I am interested in the Bulls for the next 7 days.
I think a lot of people around the league kind of feel that way about the NBA.
Yeah.
So,
are you aware that the games, you're in Ohio, are you aware the games aren't even on TV in Chicago?
No, I did not know that. Yeah. Not even on television?
Yeah, you can get an antenna and they're on DirecTV, but they're not, I think.
They're not on Comcast. They're not on YouTube TV. They have major distribution issues for the Blackhawks, the Bulls, and then once the White Sox start as well. So we have so many issues with the Reinsdorf organizations, and it's just bleeding into everything, and it makes it.
And I don't know how much you follow those other two teams, but they're not very good either. Sam, the White Sox and the Blackhawks.
They're the Bulls of the trio are somehow the best.
I know the other two teams, so that makes sense. But I think that's a league-wide problem as well. It's a problem. In Ohio as well, with teams not being on YouTube TV and the regional sports networks, and it's just a mess when it comes to live television, which is still how most people stream or watch games. And for them, the inability for the fans to do that, I think, has really taken a big bite out of the NBA when you can't watch regular season basketball if they're not on TNT or NBA TV or ESPN.
Right.
Are the Bulls as mystifying from a national perspective as they are kind of for us locally at this point? Because obviously you cover the league, you kind of know the trajectory the Lakers are going to go. LeBron's going to kind of make some rumors and he's going to go get who he wants. The Kings are going to do something crazy every once in a while. Are the Bulls kind of in that category where it's what is going on in Chicago right now?
I think they're kind of viewed as the team that you don't pay real close attention to at the moment, right? It's like, well, they can get you if you're not paying attention. But and they've done that. They've bitten a few contenders and played well against contenders and haven't finished the job. But I think the national narrative around them, which is probably the worst kind of narrative, is indifference, apathy. They're just kind of there. They're one of those teams that are in the NBA, and they're just kind of going through the motions right now. So, you don't want to be there. You don't want to be, and I know the Washington Wizards are rebuilding, but you don't want to be them either. They're 6-38 or whatever, and they lose by 40 at home to a Lakers team without Anthony Davis. I mean, they're just a disaster. They couldn't give tickets away. So you don't want to go that route either, because guess what? You may not win the lottery, because a lot of these teams that finish with the worst record don't. So I think that you want to put together a team that, if you're going to be quote unquote tanking, is doing a respectful job in terms of at least giving the fans some hope. You don't want to just go get a bunch of young players. I mean, the Wizards have that, and I'm sure their fans, their 5 fans, are sitting there thinking, we got a bunch of young guys, but are they ever going to be any good? Yeah. So I think that you really want to have a firm plan in place. And, I think the Bulls should have at least until the trade deadline and the offseason. But like you said, they've got to be careful because of that pick in the lottery. You kind of want to get pieces and parts moved within this next week if you're Chicago.
Yeah, and you're looking at the Spurs, and if that is a rumor, you brought up the Spurs as a destination.
Well, people are just always throwing it out there like, hey, do they kind of get the Wemby thing started a little earlier than maybe they thought?
Well, and they're a team, if things fall the right way, the Spurs could have 3 first-round picks, because I think they have the rights to the Hawks, the rights to the Bulls if it's outside the top 10, plus their own. I wonder if it's give them LaVine for something to make the money work, and then it's like, you no longer have the rights to our pick, and then we get one of those other 2. And that to me that's a home run. I would shake AK's hand for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Spurs are definitely a team that had been linked to LaVine, but unfortunately for the Bulls, they've put all that on hold with the De'Aaron Fox rumors and the reports that De'Aaron Fox from the Kings wants, his preferred destination is San Antonio. So there's potential there. If Chicago, obviously, I think the Bulls have been making calls and saying, hey, we'll get in on this deal to help you move Fox or Jimmy Butler or somebody like that, and maybe rope in the Pistons or something. So I think there's that potential. The Pistons really last season were one of the few teams that really had a lot of interest in LaVine, but did not want to pull the trigger because of his contract and the injury, and wanted to wait it out and see what happens. Now they're obviously under new basketball management with Trajan Langdon, so I don't know if they still have that interest, but they do have the cap space to absorb a contract. They're the only team in the league with cap space, and they can absorb a contract. And if they're looking to make a playoff push, Detroit, they could have some interest again in LaVine. I'll tell you one team that would love to have Zach LaVine. I just don't think they'll be able to pull off a deal because they don't have enough to give back, is the Denver Nuggets. They've been one of the teams that have checked in quite a bit. They feel like LaVine could be a piece along, Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon that could lift them to new heights. But it's hard to make a deal. You can't just say we want this guy and go out and get him. You've got to rope in other teams and all that.
Yeah, that's a big problem too. So many of these teams have kind of just either their cap threshold is way high, or they just they've given up too many assets in other deals.
Are. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like many teams are just out of assets.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and if you don't have expiring contracts, if you want to trade your veterans and their contracts aren't expiring, that's going to be an issue in terms of making a trade too.
I brought him up earlier. Patrick Williams, number 4 overall pick, got a contract that was pretty friendly, you could say, for his performance and the numbers he's put up. A lot of people are close to pulling the B word on him. Are you there with him yet? Have you watched much of him, or any general thoughts about Patrick Williams?
Yeah, I think sometimes guys struggle in their current environment. He might be a guy who, other teams obviously might view as a risk, but sometimes a change in culture and just a change of teammates and a change of coaching philosophy can do wonders for a guy. So if you're Chicago and you're looking to move Patrick Williams and you're open to that, it seems like they most certainly are. That's what you're selling is, look, he just needs a change of scenery. He's just not fitting in here for whatever reason. And that's your selling point. So, you hope if you're Chicago that you haven't totally given up on him yet, but you're nearing that threshold where it's like we're waiting for this guy to be the guy we had hoped, or at least something somewhat close. Because again, a trade's going to be difficult, so you've got to figure out a way to bring out the best in him. If you haven't, you've got to try to find a way to get him to another level, or you just got to. You got to cut your losses somehow, some way.
Yeah. Last question from me. Looking ahead to the draft, everyone knows about Cooper Flagg. Are there any other players that if the Bulls somehow luck into a top 3 or top 4 pick that are going to be good enough to truly kind of revitalize like a core, like a star player in this draft? Or is it kind of Flagg or bust, or maybe even Flagg's not in that category?
Yeah, I think with most of those guys, I think Flagg obviously has a huge upside, as does Bailey from Rutgers. Those are really kind of the top 2, and the guard Harper from Rutgers. But I would say those 3 guys all have the potential to be, the next big thing. But really, to me, it's a Flagg or Bailey are the 2 guys that really kind of would be the type of guys that you would want to build around.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time. I mean, they're both freshmen. Flagg should probably be a senior in high school, right?
Yeah.
So I think with those kids, it's the NBA draft used to be many, many years ago, go out and get Shaq or Patrick Ewing or Alonzo Mourning with the number 1 overall pick. And now it's, let's get a guy who in 3 or 4 years we think is really going to be a star. It's very rare to get, a LeBron James at number 1, even a Wembanyama. And even those guys, they don't change the course of your franchise overnight. Mm-hmm. So, I think that there are plenty of players with upside if they should get a top 3 pick in Chicago. It's just, we've got to be patient. But you know what? At least that excites the fans. I would think, there's a lot of benefit to getting a Cooper Flagg because of the marketing aspect of it. So from right away, if the Bulls say had Cooper Flagg next year, right away they're selling out and drawing tons of interest and, creating tons of dialogue, which is at least 50 to 75% of what you're trying to do as a professional organization is have some buzz.
Yeah. Well, actually, one last question from me. So,
sure.
You're closer to our generation. We remember the 90s and the 2000s, and I've seen a lot of from Barkley and other people being like, the league is just not as good. Like the 3-point shooting and the analytics, and it's not as good. Do you, as a guy who covers the league nationally and has followed it your entire life, do you feel that as well?
I did for a long time. I'm a traditionalist. I liked the old hand-checking rules, but I thought, and I think there could be a version of that again. I don't love how it seems like everybody who's leading the league in scoring all the time is a perimeter player. Mm-hmm. It's the NBA really caters to guards in its rules of this era. And so, and this is no disrespect to Steph Curry, who I do think is the best 3-point shooter of all time, but how would he have done in an era where defenders are allowed to put their hands on your hip and turn you certain ways? There's no closeout foul rules. I think that the rules have favored the offensive players too much. That said, I finally put that aside, and while watching the games this year, first of all, there are too many 3-pointers. it's too much. But when I'm watching games, most of the time, I'm not sitting there thinking these guys are taking too many threes. There's occasional times where I think that, but most of the time I don't. I think that the brand of basketball is more exciting than the 90s, but at the same time, I think they're doing too much gimmicky stuff. And I think that, and I, look, I'm impartial to analytics. I think that it has both its good and bad, but you got to use the eye test. So to answer your question, this is the first year that I haven't thought things are out of control in terms of the playing style. But to me, the in-season tournament, it's a gimmick.
Yeah.
Fine, whatever. It's not working. It's not drawing any better ratings than your typical regular season game. And then you hear Adam Silver talk about 10-minute quarters, and I'm just like, just stop. Just let the games play out. Put in some rules. You're hearing what the fans and the national media, like Barkley and them, are saying. Heed their calls a little bit and recognize, we need to make some changes here for the benefit of the diehard fans, and that's your audience. You don't have a lot of casual fans in the NBA. You got the diehards, and they're the ones keeping you alive.
Let's kind of go through the list of players real quick. You could just give a quick yes or no answer, like gut feeling. Does this player get moved, and then we can get out of here? Nikola Vucevic.
I would say yes. I would think so.
Lonzo Ball.
No.
Patrick Williams.
No.
Kobe White.
No.
Io.
Can I say maybe?
Sure.
Maybes exist. And then Zach LaVine.
I would say probably no. I think that they're really going to try, and there'll be a lot of conversations, and ultimately, I just don't think they'll get back what they're looking for. So, I know I said before LaVine's probably he's the guy who's most targeted by other teams, but I just think unless you really find the right deal for a guy who now wants to be here and is in Chicago and is pretty good, that you may not find what you're looking for.
And a final bonus question: where does our old friend Jimmy Butler end up?
I had to take a wild guess, and it's just wild. I would think potentially the Warriors.
Okay.
Why they would do that, I don't know, because I don't think Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry moves the needle. It just gets you older.
Yeah.
And but the Warriors seem to be the most intent. The Warriors are the Suns, but the Suns, I don't know. You've got to trade Bradley Beal, and he can tell you no.
Yeah, exactly. I saw the Bulls were rumored to take on Beal because Donovan was his coach, and I don't know how I would feel about that, but I guess it's a good step towards a good teardown because he barely plays. So
yeah,
there's
that.
Right. Sam, thank you for jumping on with us. Where could people find your stuff? What's your social handles and all that?
Yeah, thanks. Most of the time, just hoopswire.com. Sadly, we write like 20 posts a day, so that's usually where it's at. And then on Twitter or X, it's at Amico Hoops. And Instagram, I run some videos and stuff from NBA games. So that's just at Sam Amico.
Awesome. Sam, appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.